Yo, what's going on, everyone? Get ready for the next Power Hour because on the podcast I have Tyriq, who's going to be talking about his favorite games, his earliest games, and we're going to talk about the cooperative roguelike Scrubbin Trubble. Stay tuned for all that and more on the next Streamcast. No. What's going on, everyone? Happy 30th PlayStation Day and happy Podcast Eve. Podcast Day is tomorrow. I'm your host, Blackamore, and I'm joined by Tyriq P. How are you doing, bro?
I'm doing great. Great. Yeah.
Glad to hear it. For those in our audience who might not know who you are, what would you like to give a brief synopsis of who you are and what you do, especially in the games industry?
Yeah, sure. I've been, it's weird to think about, but I guess I've been doing game dev for like I've been doing game dev for 20 years, but as a professional, as a hobby when I was a kid or whatever, I was doing it for 20 years. But professionally, I started in, I want to say 2008, basically the month I graduated high school. I started doing freelance pixel art, and so I became like I was a professional pixel artist for a long time, and I taught myself how to code on the side. And now, and then I got to work on a bunch of really cool projects like Cadence of Hyrule, an Adventure Time game, what a bunch of other stuff that I'm blanking on, and then made my own game called Catacomb Kids. Got that kickstarted, and it is still in development because solo dev takes a very long time. And then worked on UFO 50, and most recently started a new company with my good friend Stevie, who couldn't be here. But we're working on a new game now.
Awesome. Yeah, we're gonna get all into that Scrubbin Trubble and more. But before all that, every gamer has an origin story. Do you remember your first ever game and console?
That's a great question. I feel like I remember playing or seeing Sonic on a screen at like a cousin's house or something like that.
Nice.
But like that was, I think I was like, it was a cousin's house, so I didn't get to play very long. It's like a vague memory. I do know the first console that we owned as a family was N64. And so the first games that we played, like that were ours, that we like played all the way through, was Star Fox and Mario 64, because I think those were both launch titles for N64. And so that's like the true origin that I had. And then, but everything's all kind of nebulous when you get that far back, because it's like, there's like these little brief periods of contact where it's like, oh, I go over cousin's house or I go over someone's house and play a game, play something else, and then of course I love piracy, so.
Oh, the age of piracy. Yes,
yeah,
I love One Piece too. Love that.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, gaming is so different from that time of the N64 and all the Sega consoles, and now we're in an age where there's so much utility, there's so much freedom. So, over the course of the N64 era to now, what would you say are your 5 favorite games?
Goodness, 5 favorite games. Oh man. I guess thinking in terms of the games that have had the most impact on me and the way that I approach the kinds of games that I want to make. I mean, I'm just a Zelda fanboy, so a lot of Zeldas are going to be on that list.
That's completely fair. Valid.
like Ocarina of Time got me sucked in, and then of course, through the magic of emulation, I played a lot of the older ones. And
nice.
I'm not going to get in trouble for that, right? Like, they can't do anything to me now. Like, it's been so long since I've emulated.
For the purpose of this podcast, some things may be untrue for censorship.
I'm speaking hypothetically.
Yeah, hypothetically.
This is
but yes, Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, Ocarina of Time. I definitely owned that legitimately. We bought that from the store. And of course, I mean, Wind Waker. I loved Wind Waker as well because it was just like I think it was just the biggest game I'd ever played at that point in time. Like the scope of it was so huge, and just like feeling like I was exploring a whole world just had a, I think, profound impact. What else? Indie games. There were some indie games. There's a game by Daniel Remar called E.G., which is like a platformer, just kind of like it's like an action platformer, I guess. But I feel like it was the first time I encountered a game where the narrative beats in the story were like built into the gameplay with like the way you played the game basically affected the way the story would play out and the dialogue of the characters and stuff like that. Not just like, you know, choosing a dialogue decision in a decision tree, but actively like choosing whether or not to be violent or not violent, or, you know, that sort of thing. I thought that was really cool. And I also just remember it being a fun game. Yeah. Well, did you ask for top 10? Goodness, that's so
5.
many.
You can
Five.
do it.
Okay,
if you want.
5.
Just 5.
Okay, no, you said 5. Okay. Oh, goodness. This is I always have such a hard time making lists like this because they're always in flux, you know? It's like everything always changes. I remember
you can put honorable mentions if you like as well.
Yeah. Honorable mentions. The early like Gauntlet games, like when they were just getting 3D. I just had a ton of fun playing those games with my whole family. Like we got my dad really into Gauntlet, and we would just all play together, and just like Green Wizard needs food badly is just like seared into my brain. Yeah, and then of course, so I guess, you know, going back to Scrubbin Trubble and how it's like, you know, sort of a roguelike. Powder roguelike was the first roguelike that I played that was like a traditional sort of turn-based roguelike in the style of like NetHack and the original Rogue and all that sorts of things. And the reason it sucked me in is because it was the first one I played that had graphics, and all the other ones were like ASCII based, and I like looked at them and I was like, this is stupid. This is just letters. And then I played Powder and it had graphics, and I was like, oh, is this what all the other ones have been like that I've been like kind of bouncing off of? And then so after I got into Powder, I like went back and retried a bunch of the old ones that I'd like bounced off before because of their lack of graphics, and I got like really into them. And then that just like birthed my entire like love of the roguelike genre in general, just like procedural generation, permadeath, and also specifically like the turn-based nature of it, which has I think like fallen out of the definition of roguelikes recently. Like like when people think of roguelikes nowadays, they just think of the permadeath and the procedural generation aspect of it, and like a lot of times they like associate it with some meta progression and that sort of thing, which is cool. All that stuff is really cool, but when I came into it, it was just games like Rogue, you know, as the title implies.
Yeah.
But was that 5? I don't know. I lost count.
I feel that was 5.
Okay.
If not, people in the comments can let us know, and then we'll just have to have you back on the podcast to complete the 5. I mean, I don't make the rules. So how do you go from playing games to going, oh, I'd like to make one of these?
I've always wanted to make stuff. I feel like when I was in high school, at some point, I like developed a creed for myself, which is a weird thing to do as a high schooler. I don't recommend it, but I basically like, you know, and this isn't anything that I ever like said out loud to people around me, like, I declare this, whatever. But it was more like just like internally, you know, trying to figure myself out as a young person and that sort of thing. I decided at some point I want to make more stuff than I consume, and that was just like, that's my goal, like in life. And I don't know whether I've met that goal. I think it's become a little more difficult and a little more nebulous as time has gone on with how accessible stuff is to consume. It's like hard to avoid consuming more than you create. But at the same time, I do think it's still I do still find it a noble sort of goal. But so I had originally, like when I was like a little kid, I wanted to be a writer, like a novelist. And then I watched a behind the scenes making of for Wallace and Gromit. Uh, and ever since and then I was like, I want to be an animator. That's what I want to do. I want to like make cartoons and I want to like do like claymation and all that sort of stuff. And so that's the trajectory that I thought like my career path was going to be on. I like went to I almost went to university for animation, and I always thought that like I liked game dev, but I always thought that would just be like a side hustle, like I would just like or like a like a hobby, like. And even at the time, I was like, when I was a kid, and I was like, sort of going around to these colleges and like, applying to colleges and stuff like that, trying to be an animator. I was like, well, I want to be an animator, but I know for a fact that the animation industry sucks and they treat people awfully. But I'm okay with that because I will get to be an animator. It was like one of those kind of things where it was like my passion is such that I don't mind selling my soul to do this thing. And then I'll just do like game dev as like a hobby thing on the side whenever I have like free time. And it ended up the exact reverse happened, which is that by the time I like got into the college and university and stuff, I realized like I'm already kind of on the trajectory of being a games artist. Like I'm already getting these freelance pixel art jobs doing game art and that sort of thing. And then I know that like nobody cares if you have an art degree. Like I don't need a degree to do this. I like the reason I wanted to do it was like to build up a portfolio. But I was like, I'm already kind of building my portfolio just by taking these contracts and taking these gigs and doing the work that I'm doing. And it doesn't make sense for me to go into a ton of debt to build a portfolio that I'm already kind of building. And so I decided against going to the university literally on the first day of class. I was like, yeah, I like went to orientation and then like was like, I think I'm gonna not come here. I'm just gonna go to community college and keep doing what I'm doing. And so that's what I did. And I think that was the best decision I ever made because I don't have any debt. Like I don't have any loans to pay back, and that makes a huge difference, especially as an artist. Famously not a well-paid career path. But yeah, so I just kind of went to community college, got an associate's degree in 2D art, and just kept taking on these freelance gigs, doing animation and stuff for various games, and then teaching myself how to code on the side, and then accidentally launched a successful Kickstarter campaign, and I guess I just started making games. From then on, I was like, I guess I'm a professional. Oops, I didn't mean to.
An accidental professional. That's crazy. I mean, yeah, first of all, congrats for not being in so much debt. I know not all of us can relate, but I am very much one for there isn't one way to succeed. I do think there should be openness about maybe going a different route to getting success or to doing what you want to do. You don't actually have to do the whole university 3, 4, 5 years of hard studying and then end up with debt that you don't ever get to pay off. I think this is really cool. And I would like to know how that leads into your 20 years of development experience.
Well, I do want to clarify one thing though, is like that is an unusual path to take, and I feel very fortunate that I managed to like, leverage my position and make the decisions that I made to get where I am. But I also want to like I don't want to overlook the fact that I'm very fortunate in the fact that I live in the Bay Area, which is a very tech-oriented city. I'm surrounded by a bunch of tech people and GDC happens here every year, so I don't have to like fly or like pay for a hotel or anything like that. I just since I've been in high school, I just go to GDC and just like we even without a pass, like hang out with people. And so I managed to make a lot of connections through that. And so like I do credit a lot of my success just to the fact that I like managed to somehow like get a decent network of like good professional people at a fairly early age, like I remember like going to events and game jams and stuff, and I was always like, oh, here's that young one. And I'm not the young one anymore, and I miss it. I'm like looking at the new young ones come in and be like, how old are you? 16, and you're doing this? That's crazy, but that used to be me. But anyway, that's a little bit of a digression, but yeah, I just don't want to like I don't know. I feel like a lot of times I listen to people who have achieved some degree of success, whether greater or lesser, and oftentimes it feels like they attribute it. I don't know where the emphasis on that word goes. To like only to their own decisions, and I believe a lot in just the nature of circumstance and luck and fortune and that sort of thing. I don't want to downplay the fact that I've been very fortunate in those ways. But yeah, as for your question, yeah, how to kind of just, yeah, it was so most of my history in like the actual industry is just as an artist and freelancer. Like, oh gosh, I've worked on a lot of stuff. Like I said, I live in the Bay, so I know like people who work at Google and stuff like that. And one of them was a friend, and they were like, "Hey, we have this like weird internal Google thing that we need icons for. Can you do that?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I just like made some icons for Google for an internal like event that they were having that they never, it's not public anywhere. And through going to game jams and all this sort of thing, I managed to meet with a lot of like people who are in the tech industry, but also had like aspirations of game dev or were doing game dev as a hobby, and they all need artists. And so I just managed to like, weasel my way in there. And I'm like a consistent enough worker in terms of like, not being flaky and bad at the stuff that I do, that once I get a gig with somebody, they'll tend to like recommend me to other people. And so that, just like being somebody who's easy to work with, I think is good and helpful.
Underrated skill.
yeah, underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, I am still an artist, so I'm certain I did flake out a couple times, but it didn't happen much. It didn't happen much. It's the nature of us as people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so just like I said, like getting recommended one job to another, it kept me somehow with enough money in my bank account that I'm able to still afford living out here, although it has come close several times. Bay Area is not a cheap place to live.
I've heard.
Yeah. Having roommates helps.
Yeah.
But and then yeah, and so like I mentioned earlier, after going to one of these game jams, a bunch of people, like I was showing people Catacomb Kids, my other game that I was working on, which is like sort of my long-term sort of solo dev baby. It's been in development for like a decade now, but it'll get done. It'll get done someday. But I was showing people that at a game jam like a decade ago, I guess, and everybody was like, "This is really cool, and you should kickstart it." And I was like, "I don't know about that." And everybody like kept bugging me enough about it that I was like, all right. And so I ran a Kickstarter, and it made enough that I mean, it didn't like make me enough to like live off of or whatever, but it made me enough that I was able to like focus on that for like basically a year solid. And then I put it on early access, and that also kind of like let me coast a little bit longer. And then that just kind of gradually transitioned to me taking less and less like freelance work and doing more and more of my own sort of coding and game dev and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's a very strange trajectory. I still feel like this year feels like the first time that I've actually basically the first year since the Kickstarter a decade ago that I've had full-time game dev, because even after that, like even last year or even like during the time that I was like working on UFO 50 and all these other things, like I was still taking on like pixel art contract work throughout that entire stretch and that sort of thing. um did Yeah, like I think I was working on UFO 50 and Cadence of Hyrule at the same time, and then I finished Cadence of Hyrule, and then they brought me back on for like some DLC artwork for the original Crypt of the Necrodancer, because they had a Hatsune Miku DLC, and and so I like pixeled a bunch of different versions of her in a bunch of different outfits for the different like types of armor and stuff like that. That was fun, but she's got too many outfits, man. That's too. It's too much.
No such thing. Oh, I love stuff like that.
But
So, congrats on the very successful Kickstarter from the sounds of it. Are there any things that you could take as learning lessons for any future projects, or for someone who wants to start a Kickstarter for their own project?
I don't know that I would. The Kickstarter was good because it did like let me sort of get off the ground on the project, but I'm still working on it. And I didn't mean for that to be true. I think in the original Kickstarter like pitch page where I was like saying how long it would take to finish the game, I think I said it would take 8 months, and it's been 10 years. So I don't know that I would do it again necessarily, knowing what I know now and feeling guilty all the time for like not having fulfilled the promise yet, that sort of thing. It feels like it's just kind of like a constant looming sort of cloud over my head of like, I gotta make, like, I feel like a liar, It's like I said I would do this thing and it's not done yet. And I know being wrong and lying aren't necessarily the same thing, but to me, they feel very similar. That's why I also don't like being wrong. It's because it feels like I'm lying, But, but yeah, so I don't know that I would have, and also it's hard to know because I think the nature of like Kickstarter and what it takes to make a successful one has changed a lot since I did it. I feel like I got in basically right before people kind of soured on a lot of Kickstarters and the idea of like a lot of these really big projects not being fulfilled. But but like I feel like I got in basically right before it became a lot tougher to get stuff funded, where like things were still really easy, and then like right after I did mine, they got much harder. So I don't know that I actually have any like applicable advice given my, I don't want to say regret, but hesitance to engage with that as a platform again, and also just the fact that the landscape is so much different than it was 10 years ago,
That's completely fair, and I respect the very honest answer. So we go from your initial project to Scrubbin Trubble. How does that all come about? Where does the inspiration come from? How does your partnership come to be?
Yeah, so me and Stevie met at a game jam like 15 years ago, and he was a musician at the time and wanted to like work on game music and stuff like that. And so he ended up being one of the musicians that worked with me on Catacomb Kids. And so Catacomb Kids is basically, I'm doing everything except the audio, is essentially what's going on there. I'm doing all the code, I'm doing all the design, I'm doing all the art. And Stevie and Dose One, who's a musician that I've been a fan of for a very long time, like somehow, like we're collaborating now. And now he's just a friend, but the two of them were collaborate on the music for Catacomb Kids. And then Stevie started hosting a monthly game dev meetup at his place in San Francisco, which I would go to all the time because we're working together, collaborating, and all that sort of thing. And we just became good friends, and just through hanging out there and working together on the game. And it's come up like multiple times over the years, essentially, like maybe once every like 2 to 3 years for the past decade. We've been like, what if we started a company together? Or like, what if we, like what if we start a project together? Something like that.
Yeah.
And so it's not something that really came out of the blue. It's something that's been like percolating for a very long time, but neither of us was really in a position to either make it happen or capitalize on it, because he was a musician for a long time, and then he got like fully waylaid by the Silicon Valley tech industry. He became like a software engineer and like didn't do music for a long time. And then more like recently, like as I was wrapping up work on UFO 50, he was also wrapping up work on another project, and was just like, man, I miss being creative. And like he was like sucked in the tech industry for so long, and he's like, I kind of want to get out of here. And then so we talked about it, and he was like, what if after you finish UFO 50, we started a company together and just start making cool stuff again for the first time in a while. Not the UFO 50 isn't cool. I mean, he was like, but anyway, it was basically just kind of a matter of like, it's something that we had been sort of tossing around for a very long time. And then finally, like the stars aligned where it was like, actually, it feels like it makes sense. And this is the first time it actually feels like it might be possible for us to like do this, make this work. So we founded Odd Object, I want to say last October, and so we will have existed for a year basically next month.
Well, happy birthday in advance. That is crazy, because you talk about the experience that the two of you have, and it's crazy, maybe not the right word, but it is a bit shocking to learn that Odd Object is still quite a young creation. Was Scrubbin Trubble the impetus, or
No.
Okay, yeah, what was the trigger point in terms of let's do it now?
It was just that I was I mean, how honest do I want to be? So Stevie lives about he lives like a short distance away from me, like within walking distance basically. So we're hanging out all the time. And I like, my work was winding down, and then I was suddenly about to be making a lot less money, and I was like, I might have to move. And Stevie was like, that's unacceptable. Let's start a company so that you can have a salary, so that you don't have to move, so that we can stay neighbors. It's basically what it was, which is, I guess it's very sweet, but it's also very pragmatic in a way of just like.
It's incredibly wholesome.
Yeah. And so we're still neighbors. He's relatively, and that's because we have the company, and I'm getting a salary that actually pays me enough to keep living here and not have to move somewhere cheaper. But it's probably going to happen eventually. but it's a little bit of delay. But I don't know. This is something that I've also, I don't know, maybe this will be useful to somebody, but something that I guess realized about myself a while ago, but has become more relevant recently in terms of just like, talking with friends and family about the future and my plans for the future, which I won't get into now, but personal stuff. But I am a person who tends to have a lot of contingency plans, and I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket, and I don't like to I'm not a risk taker. Like, I'm not a very, it's like, if I am going to take a risk on something, it's because I know I have, like, in my head, I have a plan for if things go badly, Sure. And so like I feel like that has helped me navigate a lot of the sort of strange trajectory my career path has taken, in the sense that like I've I very rarely feel like I'm on the back foot, or like I'm like thrown off balance by anything, because maybe I'm just a pessimist, honestly, because I'm just always kind of planning for what'll happen if things go wrong. I always have that in the back of my head, you know? And so I'm like, you know, if we do X and then X doesn't work, I've still got Y and Z in the back pocket, or, you know, all these other things. Um, and I'm also fortunate enough to have a fairly strong, I think, like just social support network in terms of like friends and family and that sort of thing, who I can lean on if I need to. But yeah, I feel like every decision I make is like a fractal of like, okay, here's what I want to happen, and I want to navigate that, but I also realize that every single turn can be an inflection point where things can go a different way, and I need to plan for that as well. Uh, and it's stressful, but I think it's worked.
You say pessimist, I say cautious. I think
I'm
there's
cautious.
nothing wrong with
Cautious is a
cautious.
good word. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a very cautious person. I don't.
nothing wrong
Yeah,
with that.
I this is. I've realized that I feel like I have a lot of inertia when it comes to decision making, in terms of like it's very difficult for me to like decide to do something, but then when I do, it's like, okay, now this is what we're doing. But it'll take me like a year to come to a decision about something. And then once I do, I'm like, all right, I guess this is what the next 5 years of my life will be dedicated to, you know, that sort of thing. Uh,
Of course. Yeah.
but yeah.
So when it comes to Scrubbing Trouble, what
Mm.
were some of your inspirations in the video game scene as well as outside other mediums? What were some of the inspirations behind that game?
So Scrubbin Trubble is a turn-based, traditional sort of uh, roguelike, with the twist that it is multiplayer. And so multiplayer roguelike, like multiplayer traditional turn-based roguelike, feel like I have to say all of those words every time, because if I miss one, people are going to think of something else. Because there's multiplayer roguelikes, you
Mm-hmm.
know, that
Yeah.
exist, but they're like all real time. So the turn-based is important. Anyway, this design conceit is like a white whale of mine. It's something that I've been chasing for a long time. I've been wanting for a very long time, because I really like I mentioned earlier, I really love like traditional roguelikes as a genre, with the turn-based aspect and all the like planning and sort of just like the asynchronous time steps and all that sort of thing. I really love those mechanics, but they're all single player games, and I had never seen one be multiplayer in a way that felt like it retained the aspects that I value, in terms of being able to take your time to strategize and all that sort of thing. And so I wanted to. This game is an experiment in a lot of ways, where I wanted to take those aspects of traditional roguelikes and then make it work co-op. Uh, and then also, I wanted to take some aspects of more modern, more recent roguelikes, and sort of reintegrate them back into the traditional form of the genre. So, in terms of like influences and inspirations, I really like Slay the Spire, and so thinking about like the way that works, where you know like all these like you kind of get like a catalog of abilities that you build up and like stack with each other over time until you have like an engine running and that sort of thing. Um, so that was a big one. Um, Another one, which might be uh, less direct an influence in terms of the actual gameplay, is Lethal Company, just in terms of like having a party of characters who are all collaborating and just kind of like it's hard to explain the way in which it was an inspiration, but it was just kind of on my mind when we were like coming up with the concept, and also trying to like reason with ourselves why this would be a decent project in terms of like the timing, in terms of like the market and that sort of thing. Like, here's the kinds of games people are playing now. People are really into these like sort of short form uh uh four-player cooperative games, and so this kind of fits into that mold and that sort of thing. So even if it's not like a direct comparison in terms of gameplay, it felt like we could be sort of pursuing or an overlapping market in terms of that and that sort of thing. Um, I also tend to like a lot of sort of shorter roguelikes. So like they're called coffee break roguelikes, the kind that are generally made for like as a part of game jams, where it's basically like you play NetHack. That game can take like days to complete a run. You know, for the first, you know, especially if you're going through it for the first time. Uh, but coffee break roguelikes is like, oh, this is a game that you can play and you can beat it during your coffee break, which is why they're called that. But so like a lot of 7-day roguelike jam games, I feel like I'm trying to like take a lot of lessons from them in terms of like pacing and like how to make the game feel good in short bursts, as opposed to these sort of like longer form, like, oh, you have to like build and level up your character over the course of like 100 floors before you you know before you can have a chance to like, it's like, nah, that's a little too much. um and as far as like aesthetics and like influences that aren't games, I've always been infatuated with tiny guys. uh it's but
What
do you get
about
what I
tiny guys you like so much?
Tiny guy, it's so cool. It's so I like. Okay, so I think it probably started when I saw the Borrowers movie as a kid, where it's just tiny people living in the walls, and I was like, I want to be there. I want to be living in the walls. I want to have a little sewing needle as a sword and sleep in a matchbox, which was also a thing that Jerry did in Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry,
Yes.
I always loved his sort of tiny world when he goes in the walls. So there's the Borrowers. Uh, there's like so many examples of just like little dudes in media, freaking Stuart Little, I don't know, like just like repurposing aspects of our large world to become an adventure. I think it's also, I said it was the Borrowers, but now I'm thinking even further back, and I remember like even when I was like a little kid, just like playing with action figures and stuff like that, and toys, and like repurposing the world, and it's like, oh, this isn't just a carpet anymore. This is a field of lava. Like all that sort of stuff. That's kid stuff. It never left my brain. I love it. I just want little dudes running around my stuff. Oh, the other one is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, where I think there was the scene. I can't remember if it was in like the first one or the second one or something like that, where they like were like riding ants in the yard, and I was like, that made me get an ant farm because ants are like, that made me love ants. And then also I just would sit there watching my ants and be like, what if I could ride this? um yeah, so I just really love the idea of like this sort of size discrepancy of, you know, and like recontextualizing sort of like objects that to us are small and like putting them into context of something else. And so for that reason, the sort of theme kind of emerged of, and it was also kind of a an expansion of the mechanics, the game mechanics themselves, in terms of like cleaning up the world. I was like, okay, what is this? Like trying to think of reasons that this mechanic would make sense as you're exploring around and like trying to like drive back this muck. I had like some friends suggest like, oh, maybe it's like a temporal distortion, or maybe it's like a like just like a shadowy like extra planar void or something like that. And I was like, no, I think it's just dirt. I think it's just dirt, and I think you're just little guys. I think that's more fun. Because oh, can you hear that motorcycle?
Yeah, you're good. You're good. No worries.
Okay. Um. Yeah, like I'm a fan of fantasy as a genre. I read a lot of fantasy. I read a lot of sci-fi. I love all of it. But maybe because I'm also so familiar with the genre, I like don't want to play into it all the time necessarily. Like I don't want to just like make a fantasy world, and especially after working on Catacomb Kids, which is very much just kind of in the classic fantasy trope area of just like, oh, the bad guys are green humanoids and there's like, you know, skeletons and magic and stuff like that. I just wanted to do something that was less traditional, less tropey, and like I think the contemporary world feels underutilized as a fantasy setting. Like every goodness, freaking motorcycle's gone by. Sorry about that.
All good.
I feel like every contemporary setting, or most contemporary settings, really kind of, it's like they lean into the urbanity of their setting, and so it's like I don't know how to phrase what I'm trying to say, but it's like if you have a fantasy setting, it feels like it needs to be like really fantasy. If you have a sci-fi setting, it feels like it needs to be really sci-fi. If you have a contemporary setting, it feels like it needs to be really contemporary. And I kind of didn't want to fall into any of those buckets, you know. I just want it to be like, yeah. And I feel like making everything be little guys is a shortcut to do that. Also,
Yeah, I hear it. It also shows your creativity and the imagination. I think I can definitely relate to having a collection of action figures and coming up with own stories. What with these characters, or like using these wrestling guys or using these Dragon Ball Z guys, and then
yeah,
coming up with original stories. And it seems like you said, that never left you, and I think that translates into how you're so artistically in tune, and that's translated again to your storytelling and how your imagination, you've built entire worlds. And I think it's very cool how you've utilized tiny guys to tell this massive story. So with Scrubbin Trouble, I don't
hmm
want to put you on the spot, but when are you hoping to release that game?
I don't think I can say that yet.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
It's too soon. Too soon. So it's still in development, still in
Oh yeah, yeah,
implementation.
yeah. I was still in development. Not like I don't know how much I can say, but it'll be coming. Like keep an eye out for it. Keep an eye out for it.
Okay. Yeah.
You'll
Yeah. That's
you'll see
fair.
it. Yeah.
What's next after Scrubbin Trouble comes out? Is the plan for you to solely focus on Catacomb Kids, or are you open to possibilities of making another project? What's the plan for you after that?
The plan is currently to partially shift focus back to Catacomb Kids. Yeah, so that we can like finish that out and because currently it's still under sort of my own banner, and we want to like bring it under the banner of Odd Object, and then like use those resources to push it to the finish, and then at the same time, uh, depending on how Scrub and Trouble goes, we'll see how that works and whether it warrants continued updates or whatever. I'm sure there's always patches and stuff to do, so I'm anticipating that. And then yeah, I have a lot of other sort of potential games that we can make, smaller ones that we can make internally, or larger ones that we might end up needing to like pitch to a publisher. There's a lot of stuff on the table. Like I said, I've got contingencies on contingencies, and so I'm keeping my options open in terms of like what comes next, because a lot of it will depend on how Scrub and Trouble goes, and a lot of it will depend on sort of just uh, the future of the world. Which
The fate of the world, though.
yeah. It's wild times right now, so we'll see what makes sense.
Of course. Lastly, what's one thing you are proud of over the development journey of Scrub and Trouble?
Oh, there's a lot I'm proud of. This is my first time ever interacting with like netcode, so like it's an online game, and I've never done that before. That's new to me. I think I did okay. Uh, yeah, and I'm also pleased with how the game looks. So this is the first game I've worked on where I didn't do directly any of the art. but I was just art directing. Like we had contractors, and so this is my first time like really like just in an art director sort of role, and I feel like it's really it's shiny. It looks good.
I will 100% attest to that. It does look good, and I think you've done a great job so far, and it's only
Thank
going to
you.
continue. So I wish you all the best with the release of Scrubbin Trouble. But really quickly, because we could talk for hours. I know I can, but I know you're a busy guy. So let the people know how they can support you and Scrubbin Trouble.
Yeah, please wishlist Scrubbin Trouble on Steam. It's I don't think we've spelled it. It's SCRUBBIN apostrophe TRUBBLE. So it's not spelled like how you might think it would be or should be. But yeah, so check that out on Steam. Wishlist it. You can follow me and Odd Object on Blue Sky. Odd Object is at oddobject.zone. I am at 4-Bit Friday. And yeah, keep an eye out. And this was great talking, great hanging.
Thank you so much. I'll be sure to put the links in the description and in the comments. So please go and wishlist Scrubbin Trouble, and I'll make sure to spell it correctly. That's one thing I had to get right, the apostrophe. You have to get it right. And after you do all of that, you support Tyriq in all of his endeavors. Why don't you support the Streamcast? If you're watching this live right now, give us a thumbs up because that helps us out greatly. And also subscribe. We're trying to hit 600 subs on the road to 1,000. I will be streaming live on Twitch and our gaming YouTube channel. It will be Cuphead because that's what the people voted for. I'm man of the people, I guess. But make sure you also check out our 4th Games Night Streamcast Club. And we've had so much great feedback from all of the people who have come through, and we want to keep that going. It'll be in Zombie Games Cafe in Cricklewood, Northwest London. Starting from 7 p.m. BST, come through, let your hair down, let us be your 3rd place, whether it's a party game, board game, video game. We got you. We can't wait to welcome you all this Thursday. But Tyriq is a busy guy. I don't want to keep him any longer. Until next time, which will be the 13th of October, which I believe is 2 weeks' time, I'll be interviewing Ben Burns from the Pandemonium Institute of famed Blood on the Clock Tower notoriety. But we'll be talking about all things Sega and Dreamcast. So the personal sweet spot for me. But until then, take care of yourselves and your loved ones. Stay safe. We'll see you on the next Streamcast.